Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and this is The Broken Meeple, a show where I rave and rant about board games, but usually more the ranting part. This is a game that I had some knowledge of in the previous year when it was being developed. I played it last year at the Games Expo, UK Games Expo, in its early stages. I gave some thoughts about how it could be improved, some of which have gone in, some of which were dismissed, with fair reason. And, now it has come out this year in its fully released form. I've got an expansion in here as well, but I'm not going to do that in this video. I'll do that in a separate Beyond the Base Game video. And other than just how gorgeous the cover looks, you wouldn't necessarily know exactly what it's about from looking at it. But the idea with this is that it is apparently a very straightforward and simple game of exploring different lands, drafting cards with different special abilities or powers or benefits, and using a kind of unique twist on a drafting system for how you get those cards and how you take your worker placement actions. So with only 20 minutes a player recorded on the box and 2 to 4 players, 12 plus, this looks to be something in the kind of light fare, a light category, which, I'm down for some more light games because certainly we've had our fair share of ridiculously complex games this year, and I'm down for something that's a little bit lighter on the brain from when you want to kind of detox from the really heavy stuff. So, has this got enough depth in it to make it worthwhile, or is it something that is easily forgotten?
What am I, psychic?
As with all these Euro games, it's all about amassing the most victory points, but the premise is that you're exploring these 3 lands, mountain, desert, and forest. Each one has a slightly tweaked track, which basically has flag milestones, a bonus at the very end, but for the most part, it's about getting the furthest along the track at various stages. But in order to facilitate that, you have 2 aspects of Euro mechanics. Firstly, you have drafting of cards. So these cards are available in 3s for every single color, and what will happen is that players will draft from a bag these thick tokens that correspond to the different colors. So for example, I take 2 here, and I've got the red swords, I've got the purple telescope here. One of which you will use to grab a card. The other you place in the central village. Now on a subsequent turn, if you don't want to draw out the bag, you can simply take one from the village. But let's say, for example, I don't fancy a red combat card this round. I'm going to take this purple one. You place it on top of the deck, choose one of the 3 cards, get it, it's yours. These cards vary in terms of their bonuses. So the yellows allow you to build trading posts along the different camps, which basically enable you to start further ahead in each round. The green just basically gives you straight up resources and points, it's get cool stuff. The reds tend to get you scoring points at the end of the game for having certain objectives, or mainly, trading posts at various things. The blue is all about end of round scoring, so collecting different faction symbols will yield you points here. And the purples is all about facilitating movement across the tracks quicker than other players and reaching the flag milestones. So all of these cards are useful, it's just a case of which ones do you want at any particular time. And the 3 that you have in each stack is all you have for a particular round, so it's very much a first come, first serve. Over the course of a round, everybody's going to have taken a bunch of these tokens, so there'll be a few here in the village, but for the most part, you're going to have a situation where there are multiple tokens out, different amounts on particular, different card stacks. So once that's all said and done, you move on to a worker placement aspect, where the tokens that are on the cards you use in order to go to the different worker spots. And these are very straightforward. They basically get you movement on the tracks, different resources, victory points and the like, but they're diminishing returns the later you go there. So for example, the simple one gets 6 victory points. Well, if I go there first, I get 6. If I go there second, I only get 4. Third, I only get 2. Same goes for these other resources. So if I take a green, I can get 2 apples and 1 other resource. Second person, only 1 apple. Third, just the apple. No benefit of the other resource. So, but you're only limited to the tokens that you have from the drafting round as to what is available to use. So the players have an impact as to what you can do. Once the worker placement aspect is done, you've got your resources, you then score up where you are on the track. So as you go through the round, you've got a little meeple dude who's going to move across the tracks. You might build little trading posts which enable you to basically reset back to the furthest trading point in subsequent rounds. But based on the cards that you've got, based on how far you've gotten on the track, whether you're first, second or third, you will score victory points, in such a way. You can also score victory points for cards that you've collected during a game by getting favour with the different factions. There's 4 factions in the game, and the idea is that these cards have faction symbols on the top. Collect enough of them, I believe it's 5 for every faction, and you get to score victory points for cards at the end of the game. So for example, if I get, let's try this one here. If I can get 5 of the goblins figures, then I'll score victory points for every blue and purple card at the end. It gives you an incentive to take certain cards from here, providing you're going to collect the right faction symbols from said cards. This essentially rinse and repeats for 3 rounds. It's just that you have more stuff to play with as each round goes on. But you also have to bear in mind your player board, because what exactly are all these resources for? You know, these diamonds, apples, and swords. Well, the idea is that your board has your trading posts on there. You'll build them straight from this board, but when you collect these resources, of which there is a restriction on how you can collect them in the first place, once you trigger them, you basically get the bonuses from all the trading posts that you've already built. They've got basic bonuses like move in the desert and score points for green cards, but you might be able to get more movement, more points, etc. for building a lot of those trading posts. But when you collect resources, let's say I gain these 3 resources here, each one has to go in a different zone. You cannot just say, right, I'm going to take all of these 3 and put them into that zone. Not allowed. So there is an element of resource management as well. But that's fundamentally the game. You play through 3 rounds as such. Draft the cards with the tokens, use the tokens to do the worker placement, use the worker placement to get across these tracks, and then score them up. At the end of 3 rounds, see who's got the furthest, check the endgame scoring from some of the cards, and of course, the most wins.
That's easy!
Now, you probably don't need me to tell you this, but you know what, I'm going to tell you anyway, just because this is a review. But Jesus, tap dancing Christ, is this game well produced. Woohoo! This is a colourful spectacle on the table. Everybody turns their heads when they see this. It is just an absolute, your eyes cannot handle this much colour. All the cards, different types, stand out. You know, they've got symbols at the bottom if you are colourblind, so it's not a big deal. You know, all your pieces are stupidly thick wood. I mean, you think these are deluxe tokens. They're not. This is what you get in the basic game. The only add-ons you can get for this game are deluxe resources, in which these cardboard tokens are replaced by wooden tokens. Less than a tenner if you want them, but honestly I don't think you need them. Or you can get the playmat, which basically introduces enough space to incorporate the expansion. I have it, it's fantastic, but that's an expansion thing, we're not worried about it here. You know, you just have the cards to the side of the board in this instance. But wow, everything, even the rule book is linen finished and just very nice to handle and very nice to read. These tokens that you draw out of the bag, just thick, chunky wooden tokens. And I'm just going to advocate this from now on. You know, I am starting to get sick and tired of everybody trying to do miniatures in their games. Plastic minis for this and that. And it's it's unnecessary. You can make tokens fantastic by just using wood. Wood is a solid component. Why do we need everything to be plastic miniatures and stuff like that? I just find wooden stuff a lot better in games. You know, fight me. That's the way I see it. But the only bit where the components do sort of falter is your player board. They don't warp that much, but what I don't like is the fact that it's fake dual layer. There's not actually a dual layer board in this. Essentially what happens is that you've got this thin veneer of a layer that's been peeled off for the trading posts, and I guarantee you they will not hold the trading posts. I mean, you can put one in there, but yeah, it still slides around without too much effort. So if you're going to give us a player board, either don't give us this thin veneer or just make it dual layer in the first place. You know, I mean, I would happily have given you an extra couple of quid for these to have been dual layer boards, or better still, just poke a hole out of it. That would have done me fine, actually, so that I could just have it on the table, holes are poked out of here, and then all you do is put the thing in the hole, and then the fact that there's enough space between the top and the bottom then would be enough to hold the trading post in place. But that gets a little annoying, but it's a small blemish, it's not a big deal, but it's just yeah, come on. I mean, I would have just happily had the hole punched through and that would have been an easy fix. And they really did need to find a better way to do this whole turn order thing. I get that it's about exploration and you want to do a compass thing, but this whole compass mechanic of doing turn order where you've got to put the markers down and then look at it clockwise or anti-clockwise, it's a bit on the fiddly side and it is tricky to kind of see what's what. I mean, I think a simple just 1, 2, 3, 4 track would have been sufficient without having to go too far into your thematic setting. But components aren't everything. Is the game fun to play? Yeah, actually, it's a very smooth experience, and that's kind of like the biggest draw to this. It's nice, it's light, it's smooth. It doesn't feel clunky at all. It's a very simple prospect. You need to advance up 3 different tracks. Which ones you focus on is entirely up to you. You might try and diversify. You might just, build all your outposts on the mountains and do nothing but mountain trails, and all your cards score you points for mountain trail. You can happily do it how you like, but how each phase plays out isn't clunky in the slightest. The most clunky part is probably when you fulfill a contract on these boards and you have to trigger these bonuses, but because it kind of happens instantly. But that's about it, and it's not that big a deal, really. The rules themselves, not complicated. You've got a good round summary on the back of the book to help you when you're sort of memory jogger, with a little flow chart for the round. The rounds are labeled. The rulebook has pictorial examples for how things work. It's colored. It's big font. You can easily read it. The layout maybe could have been a tiny bit better. I mean, we go into like the layout of the cards a little bit later in the book than I would have liked, but it's a minor blemish, and sometimes when you're referencing specific rules it can be a little bit hard to exactly tell where it's written. I mean, you can go into the round section, you'll be like, okay, I'm in the return section, but where's that bit about that? Oh, well, there it is, and it won't take you that long. It's not that the rulebook is, the rulebook's pretty decent. I don't think it's bad at all. It's just not as perfect as it could have been, but it's a very simple game and it won't take you long to learn from the rulebook. And if you're bringing this to the table after a play, then the round summary is all you need to jog your memory. But in terms of its gameplay, I particularly like the way this drafting and worker placement aspect works. I mean, it is very light. These worker placement spots are lighter than you would get in something like Laws of Waterdeep. They're that light. But I love the fact that these tokens play a part. So already you've got the drafting aspect of the tokens. And yes, there is going to be a luck element here. You've got ones that you can pick from in the village, but if you're drawing out of the bag, you got to accept that you might just not draw the 2 tokens you were hoping for. This is not a long game. It's only about an hour to play, an hour and a half absolute tops with 4 players if people are playing a bit on the slow side. But this is a game that can feasibly be played in an hour to an hour and a half easily after the teach and setup without any trouble. But the cards themselves, easy to read even at a distance. They make sense. But I like the cool thing that every time I'm choosing with these cards, I feel like it's a tough decision, because part of me wants to build a trading post, but then part of me needs more resources. I could trigger my mountain track a lot. Well, I'm going to need some green cards then, but I need to get victory points from somewhere. And it's like, well, I could take a red card. They give more faction symbols for these things, but then the red cards don't give me any extra points during the game. So do I really want a red card now, or should I just grab it later? But there might not be another cool red card with those symbols on it that rewards mountain trail for a while. Purple, well, that would move me up the tracks far enough, but is that going to give me much of a reward? Do I need more? Perhaps I should just get tick over income for the cards. There's all of these cards are useful in their own way, and particularly as like the green score from your player board, and the reds and the blues and the purples have end of round or end of game scoring. There's a lot of things to consider with that. But then it also stems well into the worker placement side, where you're only allowed to use the tokens that happen in the first phase. So you might not even have enough tokens to use on spaces. And they're diminishing returns. Now, granted, I do find that the purple one, the one where you get to build a trading post anywhere, is a little bit too powerful for its liking, because whenever these tokens are free, I guarantee you 75% of the time the first player is going to take a purple token and stick it on that space. It just always is probably the most popular space out there, which is great if you're going first, but it's a bit of a pain otherwise. Maybe the idea of building trading posts via a worker placement spot either needed to be more prevalent, or maybe just take it off the worker spaces entirely and have it focused on the cards. But it's not a big deal, but a lot of people do try to go to that space quite often, so if you're not going first in a round, you might want to kiss it goodbye. But I like the fact that you might just have a situation where, for example, I've got all the green tokens out, great, and I've got these out, but then I've only got 1 yellow. Nobody else was picking yellow, and it's like, well, I could go to the yellow and I get that spot, but how long do I leave it before I decide I want to go to yellow? Because, what do I value more? Resources, movement, or building the trading post? Or, 6 victory points is not a small chunk of points. Maybe I should just grab that. But then somebody's going to take the yellow, and then maybe I should take the yellow because it's the only one. These aren't brain-burning decisions, but they're a cool new addition, and they're just, cool feature. And it's enough to make you think and consider what you're going to do from turn to turn without burning the brain cells. So the draw of Explorers and why this game works is its simplicity, its pleasantness. It looks the part. It is produced to a phenomenal standard with just a minor blemish for the player boards. The different cards, easy to read, the worker placement in the drafting phase, easy to do, but I like the twists that it throws on those phases, so it's not entirely just as generic as other games. And yeah, I mean, you're just moving across 3 tracks at the end of the day, but how you move along them, where you focus on trading posts on one track or do all 3, the competitiveness with the opponents, because obviously you only have to go as far as the other players. You don't necessarily have to reach the end of the track, although it's cool if you do. And if you're going for flags, for example, you don't need to get all the way across one track. You could just do flags on multiple. There's a lot of different ways that you can play, and there's enough depth of decision space without burning the brain cells. And that's the idea. This is meant to be the box says 20 minutes per player. I guess. I mean, 2 players could do this in 40 minutes, but you would have to be playing this pretty quick. But, you know, you are talking a 60 to 90 minute time frame, absolute tops. It should not take any longer than 90 minutes at all, you know, after the teach, you know, no way in hell should it. And that makes it a nice light, shorter Euro, which in a year where we seem to be inundated with extremely long, complex 3-hour plus Euros, it's a nice refreshing change of pace. I can shove this into my game bag, and when we need something to detox in the evening or something light to get us started before we play something heavy, this fits the bill nicely while just looking drop dead friggin' gorgeous at the same time. I'm giving this one overall an 8 out of 10. It's a great game. It's not quite like blowing my mind to the sake that I would give it a distinction seal. You know, a little bit of extra variety here and there could certainly help, and you know, a couple of these spots do seem a little bit popular for their own good, but overall it's just really cool and solid. The expansion is a little bit more hit and miss. We'll get onto that in another video, but overall I think this is just a nice clean system that's going to be appealing to the eye, be appealing to light gamers, and will do the job just nicely. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and thumb it up on Board Game Geek when it goes live on the page. Check out the rest of the SN content I'm doing. There has been a ton that I have already recorded, and there's more to come besides, whether or not I'm on my cruise or not. So by all means, check it all out. Let me know your thoughts on this game, but just the base game. Don't worry about the expansion. We'll talk about that in another video, but you know, is this one beautiful for you? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Let me know your thoughts and we'll debate. So take care, and remember, regardless of whether you believe you can balance your trading posts on this board or not, it's still only a game. Good luck with that, and bye for now.